Hello and welcome to Healing Tips from the Heart, Intuition with Helpers, Healers, and Guides. I am your host, Dr. Lori Hops, licensed psychologist, writer, and artist. I've explored mind, body, and spirit related to intuition, or your personal guidance system, since early childhood. Meet my guests who have learned from their personal and professional lives to explore vast realms of knowing, synchronicities, and overcoming challenges. Their stories may inspire you with tools to enhance your daily living and relationships. Hello, everyone, and welcome. I have a wonderful guest today, Dr. Coral Westaway. She received her undergraduate degree from the University of Brighton in the United Kingdom, and she is a therapist who works with children and adults with issues about abuse and neglect and complications in their lives. She received her doctorate in clinical psychology at the University of Hertfordshire, and she has experienced specialization in EMDR and energy psychology, working with people disrupting old trauma patterns and beliefs and experiences for better living. She also enjoys being outdoors, taking walks, and being by the sea and listening and dancing to music. And Dr. Westaway also has had a very deep and personal experience with the cancer journey, which came as quite a shock to her, which she will be sharing with us shortly. So I welcome my wonderful guest, Dr. Coral Westaway.
Hi, Laurie. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining me. And I just want people to know that you and I know each other through colleagues and professional association, but we haven't actually spent time together. And so I thank you so much for opening up with this deep and personal story that I know a lot of people are going to be able to relate to, especially as it comes through to the healing journey that you've been on. And so I'd love to invite you to share more about your story with us, if you'd be so kind.
Oh, yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity to share what I've been through and all my learning.
Yes.
Yeah, so this part that I particularly want to share kind of started just over 2 years ago. I was sick one day and I had an ill week, and I went to the doctors and they sent me for a scan. And 1 week into feeling unwell, I was having emergency surgery to remove what turned out to be a cancerous tumour from my lower colon. So yeah, that was all an absolute whirl of going from being a very healthy 38-year-old, going about my life, doing my work, working, as a therapist, as a psychologist, to suddenly being thrown into this world of serious ill health, possible imminent mortality, and a cancer adventure.
Oh my gosh, how completely shocking. It must have been like walking into another reality.
It absolutely was. And I think I was so ill when I had the surgery that I was just amazingly relieved when I woke up and was feeling so much better and had a remarkably neat, quite large scar on my stomach. And yeah, I was just in a whirlwind of getting well enough to get out of hospital and get home. And I got home kind of 8 days later after being in hospital, and kind of was joking, as we do with my partner, about, oh my goodness, so now I've had bowel cancer, and didn't really realize that was actually just the start of the whole thing.
Oh my gosh.
Until we went to see the oncologist shortly after, and at my pushing her, she told me, actually, people with this type of cancer, there's a 20% survival rate over 5 years. And that's when it hit me. Wow, this is pretty monumentally serious.
There's nothing in life that prepares you for that at any age, let alone, we think of these types of devastating cancers as coming to people who are much older and have lived more of their lives, and it's still awful and shocking. But how do you even know how to go on when something like that happens? It must have felt like you were in some kind of a nightmare.
I have always been a very positive person, and I have a lot of resources, and yet it was, absolutely hearing that figure, and dealing with that was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. And there was a lot of not coping for a while. There was a lot of crying and being terrified and wondering how to share it with the people I loved. Some of the hardest stuff is seeing people you love and care about struggling and being fearful, and this whole podcast will be about how I cope with it and how I found my way through. And I can say I'm in good health now, and have no remaining cancer in my active cancer in my system, and have a very good prognosis, and personally feel I'm completely through and healed, and yet that was a big process.
Oh my goodness. And thank God that's true, and of course it didn't have to be, and thankfully you're in the 20%. Those statistics are helpful for us because they give us a frame of reference, but they don't tell us anything about the personal journey, because you are 100% yourself with whatever story it is that's going to happen to you, and it doesn't really map on to the statistics. And so we learn about that in grad school, the difference between group data and individual data, and they don't have enough know-how yet to know our personal journey individually, so they have to use group data, but it just scares the bejesus out of you, because you're like, which way is this going to go? So and of course it's completely normal to be in shock and scared and crying and having to tell people, and then they're falling apart, and then who is there for you? So how did you get through all of that?
Lots of ways. I fell apart to begin with, and then I allowed people to support me. And it was a bit of our mantra. All my friends would say, of course you're in the 20%, if not you, then who? And I had a lot of incredible support, and I felt very well resourced. Once I was slightly beyond the shock, I dug a bit deeper, and I thought, okay, what now? Throughout the process, and I'll speak a bit more about my kind of experiences with chemo, because that was an interesting, important part of it. But historically, I've been not 100% on board with mainstream medicine. I've been, always interested in what else. So I felt quite resourced in what else. And what I found was my oncologist, and I pushed her to tell me the figures, actually, because I felt it was important for me. She said the surgery was 5% of that 20, a quarter of that 20%, and the other 15% would come from going through chemo. So I sat there as a healthy person who'd always thought I wouldn't need to go down that route, and would find other ways, kind of accepting, okay, this is going to be part of my journey, and this is going to be something that I'm going to need to get on board with. And it challenged some of my perceptions around what healing looks like, actually. And there was a lot of that, a lot of what's right for me in this moment, and what I call, and I'm sure other people have called, kind of following the breadcrumbs.
Yes.
You know, that somebody or something appears that just somewhere within me, I feel, I think there's something in this for me. And then I would pursue that avenue. And I was very open to every type of treatment. You know, I didn't do everything, but tuning into every type of treatment and thinking, does this feel right for me now?
Beautiful.
And whilst a lot of me was initially against the chemo, you know, and crying out to how can put in these crazy chemicals, these like chemicals that say cell death on the label, how can putting that into my body be helpful?
Yeah.
A deeper part of me knew that actually that was going to be beneficial for me, and I worked hard to support the parts of me that were fearful around that, and to align my whole system to the gift that the chemo was giving, you know, and all the people, all the professionals that had been involved in researching that, developing that, offering that, providing that for me. I aligned my system with gratitude to kind of receive that and maximize the healing and minimize the negative impact or the side effects.
Beautiful that you had the wherewithal to do that, and that you also knew yourself so well ahead of time so that you could be following the breadcrumbs in a discerning way. Not everyone has that, but even if someone wants to develop it right now, do you have a system that you use for that knowing, or is it something you're born with?
I truly believe we all have a deep body wisdom, a deep soul wisdom, you know, and I think our experiences and our conditioning and our lives have taken us out, you know, and put in blocks to kind of really connecting to that knowing. So as you said, I'm an energy psychologist. I use energy practices a lot in my work, and this really encouraged me to use it a lot more personally. So so clearing any blocks to healing, clearing any blocks to trusting, but also really listening. You know, I had a lot of time, I knew I needed a lot of deep rest. And one thing, one very useful thing that a dear lady said to me was, Cora, your time to help others will come again, but this is all about you.
Yes.
And I was really invited to give myself everything I needed, you know, and I'm very fortunate that I could, and, you know, responsibilities that allowed that of me. But so I had a lot of time to be still, to be healing, to be resting, and to be listening. And I think if we can all listen more within, you know, not at a head level, but at a heart and at a gut level, and tune into, okay, what is piquing my interest? What is around for me that is kind of resonating something inside of me? And then pursuing that. And then, you know, some of those channels might lead nowhere, but others might absolutely open up to deep richness and growth.
There's so many beautiful, rich things that you've talked about, and I have several different images coming to mind, and the one that is bubbling up to the surface most is a story that I recently heard about the channeler called Lee Carroll, who channels the information from Cryon, Kryon. And Lee had a terrible experience with heart problem that he doesn't even know before surgery how bad it was. But he did have surgery. But before he had surgery, not only did he ask his community to help pray for him, but he got some special information from his channeling source that I think applies to so many people, and I wish more people knew about it. So this is the piece. We are pre-programmed to remain alive, and anything that teaches us that could be threatened comes up as a no to our system, like don't go there, right? So when you think about surgery or cancer or whatever, there's an immediate kind of a no, or chemo sometimes for people, because it's like it said, cell death. So why would that be a yes? And what happens is the body then launches a defense against the surgery, the invasion, the chemo, whatever it is, and the cancer. So the trick then is to reprogram yourself temporarily for a yes, where there would naturally be a no. Because what you really want is for the healing aspects of those things to come in and help you. And so when the mind can tell the body, for right now, I know you want to say no, but take this as a yes, let go and surrender and let this come in and be helpful, then the body isn't launching an additional fight against whatever it is that's coming in. And he was able to be up and around with almost no pain meds, like just very shortly after the surgery. And people were astounded that he had done so well. So I'm hearing parallels between his story and what you were drawn to naturally in terms of saying yes, even to this cell death, cancer, chemotherapy treatment.
Yeah, that totally resonates, Laurie. Yeah. I think we're told a lot of stories when we're ill. I think we're told a lot of stories when we're well about illness. And I think it's important that we kind of deconstruct those stories. And one of the stories I was told about chemo was, it's cumulative, it will get worse as it goes along. And I'm like, I don't like this story. And actually my experience was very different. My initial response to chemo was that resistance and that confusion around how on earth can this be helpful. And my response, my physical response to that was not great. I had side effects and I felt ill, and the whole process was pretty grim. But as I went on and I worked with my whole system to kind of align to the benefits of chemo and to protect the parts of me that did not receive, need to receive this, to invite the chemo to target the cancer directly, to visualize a protective channel as I took it, as it went down, targeting the areas it needed to get to. Actually, I found that my response to the chemo was easing off, and towards kind of 2/3 of the way through, the day after, I had an ill day, and then I was kind of back up. We were out to lunch. I was managing it much better, and they said I did 8 rounds of chemo, and they said a lot of people don't manage the 8 rounds because the side effects are so bad. And actually for me, I just didn't have a lot of the side effects that I was so grateful to. But I really feel that aligning my system, with gratitude and receiving, like you say, switching on the yes, really absolutely supported that process.
Wow. I'm sure it helped that you were younger and healthier to start with as well.
Yeah, I've no doubt. Yeah. And I felt, I know nutrition, I know mental health. I've got an amazing support network. I live in a beautiful place, with a garden I can go and sit in and, be in nature. So I had a lot going for me, for sure. Yeah.
Wow. And not everyone is so fortunate. Sometimes there's like victim blaming, like someone is sick and then they try to say yes or do what they can, and then they're sick anyway, and they may get even worse. And so it's like, what am I doing wrong? So I don't want to give that message out, because that's important to recognize that not everyone has a successful journey.
Yeah, and the language around cancer is so loaded, and I think, part of kind of going back to the 20%, part of it was for me, okay, I'll say what happened. I'll say what happened next. Where my breadcrumbs initially led, I'd met, I'd done a training course with an amazing lady called Janet Trelaw, who also channels Zach, who's an aspect of an ascended master. And I'd done a training course with her, and she talked about having multiple near-death experiences. And she'd realized that her soul contract was to die before she was 40. And she'd realized she really didn't want to die, but she was having a lovely life. So she went about her journey, and she discovered work called life between lives regression. And she, in this training course, spoke about changing her soul contract. So I was very intrigued by this, and I messaged her explaining my situation and saying that I didn't think I was going to die from the cancer, but I wasn't sure, and if I'd signed up to die from it, I wanted to see if there was anything I could do to change that. And for some people, I think the answer is no, but for me, Janet directed me and signposted me to this life between lives regression work, and I undertook the regression with a lovely therapist, and I very clearly got the message: no, you're not going to die from the cancer. It's going to challenge you, but not more than you can manage. And I thought, oh, challenges. Oh, how many more challenges? But it gave me such solidity in that I was not going to die. And from that point, I could step out of the fear of dying, and so it is something all of us have to face, but in that moment I could not have to deal with imminent mortality, and I could focus on dealing with healing and learning. And I can probably only say this retrospectively, but kind of playing with the with the experience of deep healing and following the breadcrumbs.
Well, I mean, play is spontaneous. Play doesn't necessarily mean joyfulness, so it's a spontaneous creative response to life circumstance. I mean, I don't know if that's the exact dictionary definition, but that's the essence to me of what play is. And so in your darkness, there was an element of play because you had a spontaneous response to what was put in front of you with free will. And to be able to have that kind of reassurance and say, I am not going to die. Like we can just take that whole bucket of whatever and put it off to the side and say it will happen, but not in the near future. And then you can just devote yourself, because otherwise your energy is siphoned off into that bucket of death.
And
Which,
I do want to say, and this is part of what I really, say to everyone, actually, there was darkness and there was hard stuff, and there was a lot of joy. And I really, I think our narratives around cancer is we know the dark stuff, we know the hard, or we think we know it. But I don't think a lot of people, share how many gifts there can be. And for me, the gifts were immense, and the closeness that I had some amazing friends and loved ones and family, and an amazing partner. And also through this journey, those relationships just deepened and got more and more rich and closer. I reconnected with a lot of people who I hadn't connected with. My relationship with myself, improved so massively. I was able to prioritize myself in a way that I never have throughout my life. But there was a lot of fun, a lot of silliness, and and just so much love. I had a moment where I was on my own, and I was almost like, I just can't really handle any more love. Feeling a bit like flooded, and I was like, come on, Coral, you can't do that. And I just realized I just had to burst my heart open to, you can't turn love away, can you? So it was it was pretty profound in lots of ways, and it wasn't all dark.
That's beautiful. I'm so glad you said that. Yeah, I can relate to that bursting of tenderness. You're almost like raw from like a love attack.
Mhm.
Like enough already. It's almost like too
Yeah.
much sweetness.
Humour, yeah.
Yeah. And to try to like bring that in, to infuse it into your system, and then to have a space for it to continue. So what's coming to my mind right now is the stories of people who have had near-death experiences, and how when they come back from it, oftentimes they have a hard time reintegrating into ordinary three-dimensional life, because they've seen and experienced something that's beyond comprehension, and often they might feel isolated or unable to relate to kind of the more pedestrian aspects of life. So was that something that you experienced as well?
Not quite the same. I think I've always been a bit alternative. I've been someone who bridges, I think.
Okay.
So I'm a clinical psychologist, I've gone through the education system, I've worked in the health service.
Yeah.
I can absolutely fit in, and I have a lot of spiritual views. I engage in complementary alternative therapies and things. But that's always been a part of who I am, and I've never kept that part separate. So whilst everyone around me is not always on the same page, they're very, very open to that, and I think I was just more of that.
Yeah.
But what it really did do was invite me to absolutely review my life. And I did leave my Monday to Friday 9 to 5 job, and I am still a clinical psychologist, and I'm doing that in different ways, but it really invited me to review, to reassess priorities, and to really review and get clear on how I want my life to look, and what the best version of that can be.
Yeah. And you took it to heart. You took it into yourself. So do you have a life lesson or perspective that you have learned now that guides you in a different way, that's maybe your true north afterwards, now that you've been through this?
Yeah, a few kind of aspects to that, I think. And this is probably an ongoing journey, but the prioritize myself in every moment.
Okay.
And that doesn't make someone selfish. It makes someone the best they can be to shine their light most brightly, and support everyone else. But that's a challenge, from someone whose life experiences have conditioned care, who's been a carer, in every sense. So I'm working on that one ongoing, but prioritize myself in every moment. And I guess using my resources for me, using my energy work, and tuning into what I need in each moment, and listening, taking time to listen to that inner wisdom.
Yeah, that's great. So many people that go into the helping professions are givers. And we, I include myself, and get a tremendous satisfaction out of the interaction of giving and receiving too. But to prioritize yourself is a special kind of meditation, or orientation towards living. Yep. And it doesn't always come so naturally, and oftentimes because it means that you have to put other things aside that you naturally would gravitate towards, including other people's needs and priorities, and saying no to other thing, including things that you would be drawn to naturally yourself.
Actually, it's an endless juggle of balance, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I like that. That's my orientation.
So this is a question I hadn't really thought about until talking with you now, but there's some wonderful work about dreams and knowing dreams that come ahead. Larry Burke radiologist, has done some work with this on precognitive dreaming with illness and with cancer. So I don't know if that's been something that you experienced, that your dreams were speaking to you either before or during or maybe even after.
Not before. I think my sense is actually this was designed to come totally out of the blue.
Okay.
Whilst also at a very good time in my life when I had all the resources I needed, you know. But afterwards, yeah, I definitely got some guidance and some I don't know, clues is a bit of a funny word, but some direction, yeah, through dreams.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I also had kind of clearer daytime visitation, I felt like, from kind of my higher self, and like actually blowing the light bulb and kind of turning up to tell me kind of in the middle of the chemo, like, there's work here, you know, this is leading somewhere. And I have a sense that in the future I can bring all this learning together and kind of really support other people. But yeah, it's a work in progress. It's a bit of a long-term plan, but but I had that kind of, you know, almost like this, you know, this is all meant to be, this is all part of what you're here for, this is all informing what you'll do in the future, and just take everything you can from it, kind of guidance.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah, you clearly have a very intricate and specific understanding of your intuition through dreams, through symbols, through knowings, through following the breadcrumbs. So
yeah,
and that continues. And thank you so much for sharing your personal story, because I can sense that there's people who are really benefiting from hearing it. I can hear the ahas going off. Oh my, you know, and the connections that other people are making because of what you're sharing about yourself. And I'm wondering, is there anything else that you'd like to share about this journey? Maybe healing from the heart, or helpers, healers, and guides?
oh yeah. Yeah, well, there was a lot of, you know, wise other people who I drew both healing and resources from. And I think healing from the heart, what that says to me, you know, and what I want to say about that is that everyone's journey is totally unique. And you know, I love all the resources that say, you know, this helped me with cancer and this helped me with cancer, and also that might be useful for you and it might not be, you know, and the things that have helped me might be useful to you and they might not be. You know, I used a lot of other things. I used acupuncture, I used energy healing, I used plant medicine, I used you know, nutrition supplements, yeah, holistic nutritionalists, and all of these things were integral to my healing journey. And they might be for you and they might not be. And I think it's not that there's just no one way, you know, and there's no right and there's no wrong. And yeah, the most important thing we can do is bring ourselves compassion, you know, that we're doing our best in every moment. And if that's not there, I think that's the place to start, you know, your relationship with yourself. Because it's hard being ill, and it's hard thinking you might die, and it's hard when all your loved ones are terrified and, you know, doing their best but projecting a lot of stuff on you, or trying not to, you know. And but all my ones were amazing, and I said to them very early on, it doesn't serve me for you to worry about me. What I really would love you to do is imagine us, you know, picture us dancing together on the other side of this, or picture us, you know, having a wonderful time, or, you know, in the sunshine, or whatever it is. But let's not focus on these struggles, you know, I absolutely invited people in to be with me in the pain and the fear and the shock and the grimness of a lot of it. And I also invited them to not stay there, you know, to also be in the playfulness and, you know, have ceremonies and laugh and be in the sunshine and do whatever we could in each moment to keep living life and to keep moving to the place where I wanted to be again.
And did you have that dance party?
Yeah. I did. I had a big end of chemo party actually before I even had the all clear. Yeah, we had a big end of chemo party in my garden. Yeah,
I
with
love
lots
it.
of music and friends, lots of dancing. Yeah,
I could see you there.
Yeah.
In my image, it's like spring or summer and you're wearing a dress, maybe barefoot.
Lots of barefoot. Yeah. Yeah, lots of barefoot.
That's so great. I love it. Yeah, there has to be room for all of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The joy and the sorrow, the fear and the release, and to not get stuck. I mean, so much of life is about flow.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. And that is okay to not always be moving, you know, that you know, sometimes water pools before it kind of carries on. So it's the pauses are really important too. You know, we are in flow when we feel like we're not moving, you know, and when we're just the taking stock. Yeah.
Yeah, the image that I have is like the merry-go-round, but it's on a spiral. And so even though it looks like, oh, I'm going around and around in the same space, but it's like, but you're moving through space even while you're rotating. So it's sometimes it's a perspective shift and just allowing for things to be, like you said, stuck or frozen or confused. Yeah. Beautiful.
I've always been someone who is quite positive, and it's been a lot of my journey to learn how to really feel the hard bits, you know, and feel and acknowledge. And also I feel like in the cancer space, we are flooded with the hard stuff. So I am not here pretending I did not have really, really hard times, you know, and pain and sickness and, well, you know, hard stuff.
Totally.
And also, I just don't feel like we hear the other side of things. So I feel more my message is wanting to say, there's so many gifts in cancer, and there's so many opportunities in illness and in change and in, you know, there's a lady, Sophie Savage, who died, I think, last year, and she wrote a book, The Cancer Whisperer, and her second book is called Life Shocks. And I think this term life shocks is so powerful, you know, that if we could reframe the things that come to us in life as, you know, this is an opportunity to really reevaluate, you know, and look deep into what in my life is calling out to be healed, you know, what in my life is calling for change, what do I need in this moment and moving forward, and using these life shocks as absolute opportunities to step into our better selves.
That's a full circle moment, because I think we started talking about the shock of the diagnosis. And you know, we use shock to restart a stopped heart. So the shock can stop you, it frees you, but it can also get you moving. So oh my goodness, thank you so much for sharing your story. And is there anything else you'd like to say before we say goodbye for today?
No, I'm just super grateful to you, Laurie. Thank you so much for creating this space and allowing me to come and share things.
I'm so grateful you reached out and said, please, I'd like to participate in this. And brave soul, I have to say, because people won't know this once it's released, but we are in pre-production and haven't even released any of the podcasts yet. We're about to. So thank you so much for trusting and saying yes, and sharing just your bright light It comes
you.
right through the screen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, bye-bye, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's podcast. If you want to learn more, you can visit my website for podcast and resources at hopshealingtips.com. You can also like, share, and subscribe to this channel. This podcast is for information and entertainment purposes only and is not providing healthcare advice. Please seek guidance from your professional healthcare team should you need assistance.